So I was applying, when I was trying to leave the Air Force, and anyone who has transitioned out of the military knows what this feels like. You're like, what the hell can I do? Like, in one way, you're like, the whole world is an option. And then in the other side, you're like, I only do one thing in uniform, and nobody needs that out there. So in my kind of frustrated attempts to figure out where I fit in, that was when I just boiled myself down to, well, what am I? Like, what are the things I really want here at 27? I want to travel the world, not just the world, but like the armpit of the world. I want to see the shittiest parts of the world because I was able to see some shitty parts of the world with the Air Force, and it really made me proud to be an American. So I was like, I want to see more shitty parts of the world because it's just going to make my confidence and my appreciation for my country that much firmer. So I was looking for Africa. I was looking for like hardship. And I was looking for a lady with hairy armpits and hairy legs that wanted to get it on in a tent in Africa. Those are the two things I was looking for. Peace Corps was going to deliver.
Wow!
But halfway through that application process,
taste you have.
but I want to understand how the CIA works. Something popped up on your screen. Was that intentional or was that accidental? You see what I'm asking? So
you got to remember the government works like one giant organism, and the Peace Corps is part of the government. State Department is part of the government. DHS is part of the government. FBI is part of the government. The U.S. military is part of the government. My entire record, going back to the age of 18, was on file. My name was in capital letters, which means I'm an asset of the U.S. government, right? That's what they saw. So when I started applying to another government agency, I fell into some massive algorithm somewhere and happened to hit on what they were looking for, just like a keyword search anywhere else.
Got it.
And I got a warning screen that popped up in the middle of my online application to Peace Corps. A screen that said, hey, you may qualify for other opportunities. Big red screen. Please put this application on hold, and we'll reach out to you within 72 hours. If you were to have the same thing happen, big red screen says, hey, you may qualify for other opportunities, and you're 27 years old, how easy is it to click that button and says, yes, put me on hold? And that's how they found me. And then from that point forward, it's just that application was abandoned and a new application was created.
So it's not a word of mouth method of recruiting.
They have CIA has multiple ways of recruiting. There is word of mouth. For sure there's word of mouth. And that's for a very deep cover kind of niche area, because there you're looking for people with established credibility and in some special field. So it's not easy to find business people who are actually running successful businesses, and then you want to turn them into spies. That's a hard thing to do. So you look for word of mouth. And then you have things like the government world. Anybody trying to move from one government job to another government job, that can be automated. That's easy. And then you've got the whole world of college recruiting, where you have either somebody who's a recruiter on campus or somebody who's a regional recruiter that visits multiple campuses. And you will literally find CIA in a cheesy stall with a sign at almost every college recruiting event for big colleges.
Pat, you told the story that your dad pulled you aside one day and he's like, you can tell me, son. It's okay. It's just, you can tell me. You were in the Army, 101st, right? And your dad literally thought you were doing something else. What was that story?
This was 5-6 years ago. He says,
it's 5-6 years ago.
This is 6 years
You're already running PHP, a full-on business.
No. This is 6 years ago. This is maybe 5 to 7 years ago where he's like, you can tell me, we have people in the family. I'm like, Dad, I'm telling you I'm not. He says, I understand if you are. I said, Dad, first of all, I'm not. He says, I know even if you were, you couldn't tell me. I said, Dad, I'm telling you right now, I'm not. So till today, there's a 20% chance.
He legitimately thought you could have been something in the intelligence community, CIA, what have you.
Yeah,
Mossad,
I don't even know where the speculation for him came. He just one day came up to me, we're having dinner, and he asked me a question. He says, I've been really thinking about this. I don't know how to ask you without offending you.
Yeah.
He says, are you? I said, I'm telling you, I'm not. He says, I understand. And he keeps saying, I understand.
Wink,
I'm like, yeah,
wink.
like this. Like, no, I'm telling you, I'm not. But
he's your dad, man. He's your dad. So your dad always thinks that you're the best. Your dad always thinks that you're the most elite, right? Like, that's an awesome dad.
That's an awesome dad.
Pat, the reality is, and I'm using air quotes, you're most likely not an asset, but you were at one point. Did you have family members, people pull you aside and be like, Andy, come on. Just tell me. I'm your dad here. I'm your friend.
Yeah.
Nobody was on to you? Do you have those difficult questions?
Yeah. Honestly, one of the things CIA does train you to do is how to look and act like the most boring, forgettable person, especially to your own family. So I didn't get a lot of those challenges.
How do you do that?
So one of the
Because that doesn't look like a natural thing for you. You don't seem like a boring,
No.
So how do you adjust if you're not?
you have my background, which is what makes me interesting. I got turned away at the front door of your building. They looked at me, and the guy, no kidding, said, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
And I said, "I'm here for an interview." With who?
Yeah.
Patrick. We don't just let anyone into this
Right.
building. I need
Who
to call
said this,
someone.
by the way?
I need to call someone before I can let you in.
I saw him
Text me, tell me
standing
who this is.
outside as I pulled in. I usually come in the back door. I saw Andy in the
Yeah.
front. I was like, oh, that's, I know who that is. And he couldn't get in. I was like, come on, buddy, right this way. Sign in, please, though.
So that's how you do it, man.
Just being discreet and just not someone, that someone would recognize.
So the human brain has two elements to it, right? It has a fight or a flight response in its paleomammalian brain, in the central cortex in the back of your brain. So you look at everything around you as either beneficial or threat, right? Or even to boil it down further, threat, non-threat, threat, non-threat. The way that you get yourself forgotten, you always trigger the non-threat side of the brain. If you ever trigger the threat side of the brain, either because you're super attractive or because you're super ugly, whichever one it is, right? If you trigger that threat response in any way, you're going to get remembered. The brain will store that in short-term memory, move it to long-term memory, just depending on what it thinks. If you trigger the non-threat side, you don't even get retained in short-term memory.
So essentially, okay. So let's talk about it. How to be a non-threat. Don't ask tough questions.
Yep.
Don't ask technical questions. Don't ask why questions.
Don't talk about yourself.
Don't talk about yourself. Don't touch politics. Don't touch world events. Are those some of the ways you...
Correct. Look put together, but don't look like you put effort into yourself. Don't wear your money. Don't wear money on your wrist. Don't wear money on your fingers. Don't wear money on your clothes. Show up on time, not early or late.
Why is that?
Because if you show up early, then people remember that because usually you catch people by surprise. If you show up late, people are usually annoyed because they've been waiting. If you show up on time, you give everyone else a chance to either be early or late, and they feel good no matter which way they are. Because either they were early and prepared for you, or they were late and you were prepared for them, which makes them feel good.
Interesting, but that's a little counterintuitive to what I hear about the military. We have our friend, a couple of friends of the Marine here, Chris. He says, if you're on time, you're late.
Yeah, that's
so
what
how
military
do you?
is.
That's like kind of cognitive dissonance between a CIA agent and just a typical military person.
Correct, because remember, CIA, when you're CIA, you're trying to be discreet and you're trying never to appear as a threat. You're trying to be forgotten. When you're military, you're trying to show obedience. You're trying to be remembered, right? So on time, early is on time is late. Very, very standard military jargon. Because when the commander shows up, the commander wants everyone there because who wants to feel important?
The commander.
The commander.
Right.
If you show up after the commander's there, everybody looks at you because they think you think you're more important than the commander.
Yeah, that makes sense. So going back to it with the recruiting side, hopefully we'll get to the bottom of the story on how you got recruited this time. Let's see if we're going to get this, guys. Okay, this time around. So you apply on this. You said the pop-up, right?
You said it popped up, exactly.
So you apply on this pop-up. What happens next?
All I did on the pop-up, all I did was click, put me on pause. So I'm inside the Peace Corps website. I'll wait for 72 hours before, and I'll give someone a chance to call me. About 24 hours later, I get a phone call. And the phone call is to an old school flip phone, if you remember those old flip phones.
Yeah.
And all it says is 703. I don't know what 703 is, but it doesn't say blocked. It doesn't say unlisted. It doesn't say the full number. It just says 703. So I pick it up. On the other end of the line is some nice person, a lady, who basically says, hey, are you Andrew Bustamante? Did you apply for this position? And, I said yes to all those things. She was like, hey, it seems like you might be a good fit for a role in national security. Would that be something that interests you? And then we have a very short conversation that basically just verifies I am who I said I was online, and that I would be interested in national security position. They don't say who or who with.
Did you ask?
I did. I said, who is it with? And she said, we're not in a position to disclose that right now. But she did say, we would like to interview in person in Washington, D.C. Would you be amenable to that? And again, 27-year-old single male. Everything she asked me was yes. Right? Yeah,
I'm down. Let's
do it. Let's go. So then she said, well, we're going to send you a ticket and a rental car reservation, a hotel reservation. It'll be at your house overnight, and then just follow those instructions, and we'll see you in D.C.
To Virginia. Oh, D.C. Gotcha.
Yeah. So for me, I'm in Montana at the time, and I think to myself, never going to happen. Nothing's going to show up. That was just a weird crank, like whatever. People are just stupid.
You legitimately didn't think it was a real thing?
Because I was a nuclear missile officer for the Air Force too. So this just seemed to me like this could have been anything.
And
could have been
there's not a lot of people
exactly.
say that I'm a nuclear missile officer
right.
in the Air
Come on, guys.
Your
I'm just
boy
a little
Vinny
old nuclear missile.
Vinny did the same thing.
He was a nuclear officer in the Air Force?
I don't think he's as qualified as Andrew.
No, but wait a minute. Vinny was a nuclear officer in the Air Force.
Vincent Oshana, the same guy who dresses up as Alfonso Ramirez and raids Nancy Pelosi's office, was a former nuclear missile officer
In the Air Force.
in the Air Force.
We're going to have to verify that.
We're a cool bunch of crazies.
That's true.
Okay, so you're in Montana. They send the car. You're thinking there's no way. There's someone's trying to pull a prank on you.
And then I get an overnight package that has everything she said it would have with a physical paper ticket that has me in DC like 2 months later. And I go. And I go and I follow everything.
The recruiting process.
The recruiting process kicks off. Now, for most people, that recruiting process is somewhere between 9 and 18 months because it takes so long for the security clearance to come through. I already had the clearance. So my interview process happened in about 6 months. Not because I was smart, but just because the majority of the work was done. They had my whole military background. They knew that I was a Chinese speaker. They knew I had nuclear missile knowledge, and they knew that I was. Now
let me ask you. You say that because I'm not smart. Are you?
Right.
You know how sometimes we're kind of like, well, I'm not the smartest guy. You know,
Exactly.
And we're kind of playing that I'm not that smart to not be a threat because we want to be not a threat, and you're naturally trying.
I gotta
You've
stop
mentioned I'm
teaching
not
you.
smart multiple times. I'm thinking, yeah, this Air Force nuclear scientist over here, not that smart.
Yeah, but no, but a part of that is for me. I don't know if I want CIA to not recruit smart people like you. I don't want them to go recruit like just anybody off the street. So, you know, there's a when I worked at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, we went through a bunch of interview process. Of course, nothing like it. In military, you didn't go through interview process. I was a Hummer mechanic, so you don't become a Hummer mechanic needing a process. Just here's a wrench, go, right? But when I did go through Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, it was like one interview, two interview. You're not accustomed to that many interviews, and you're taking test after test after test after test after test. What were some of the tests you took with them? Was it more mental? Nah, I'm assuming none of it was probably physical, because if you're coming from Air Force, they already know you're somewhat taking care of yourself. What were some of the tests you went through?
Yeah, so it's a psychological battery. It's a psychological battery almost exclusively. So I had a 2.4 GPA coming out of college, which is well below what they say you have to apply to CIA. They say you have to have a minimum of 3.5. And then I went on and got a graduate degree at University of South Florida. And I did well in my graduate studies, mainly because I wanted to prove to myself that I was smarter than I was in college. I was just chasing tail in college, and we all suck grade-wise when you spend late nights on benders and tail. Mm-hmm. But the application process for CIA looks like personal interviews, where they're basically pressure testing your ability to work under fire and be flexible with the situation. And then they pair that with psychological interviews. Some of those psychological interviews, or some of those psychological tests, test your personality. Others test your cognitive reasoning. Other ones actually quantify your ability to take disparate information and then combine it into something useful. So I did well. I must have done well enough in those tests to be moved forward. But I didn't expect at any point to actually make it to the next round, because in the back of my head, I'm thinking, like, I barely graduated college. Yeah, granted, I went to a nice college. I went to a challenging college, but I still didn't get great grades, and I wasn't a 4.0 student in high school. I am the model get distracted by things fun in life kind of person. Just turns out, after I got in, that is exactly what CIA is looking for.
If you like this short clip, make sure you click here to see the next clip, or here to see the full podcast episode.